his name up in lights. Don Miller is live every Thursday night. He's bold, he's real, no filters, no shade. When hits the mic, the truth gets laid. Don's in the building, his swag so tight. Check your feelings, he's exposing all the lies. Every Thursday at 8, his voice takes the stage. The man's got soul like a record with age.
It's Thursday night. Yay, it's Thursday night. The week is almost over. Shout out to Phil, the podcast doctor. Hey, man.
What up?
Man, I'm so excited about this show. You know, every now and then I have a show where I get excited coming in here. At the end of the show, I want to tell you what happened on my drive. I engaged in a conversation with an absolute idiot.
Oh.
But I'll tell you about that before we leave the show today. But I am so excited because the guest that is joining us this evening, a few years ago, I saw this young lady. You remember, Phil, I often talk about bitch-ass Brandon Johnson.
That's like his title, right?
Yeah, that's his name. That's his whole last name, bitch-ass Brandon Johnson, right?
All right, okay.
He is the current mayor of Chicago who is doing coontastic behavior.
Coontastic
He
behavior.
is cooning at a level I'm unfamiliar with as he engages in ridiculous-ass politics.
Okay.
But I saw this young lady, man. I don't know, 3, 4 in the morning. I'm on that drink, and I'm watching this young lady, and she went to the microphone, and I was like, who the hell is that? I was like, who is that? I started texting people in Chicago. They like, dude, we sleep. And finally, somebody told me who it was. Then I saw her on several networks, and I am so excited to have her join me here on this damn Don Miller Show. First of all, shout out to all the people who follow this show on the radio as well as here on the podcast. Subscribe and like. Shout out to Phil, the podcast doctor. Shout out to Amber Cuchilla, the little white lady, who absolutely is making this so much easier for me because I almost quit because this is a lot of work considering I got other things to do the middle of the damn day.
Yeah.
But shout out to Amber Cuchilla, the little white lady back up and around over there. And so joining me tonight on the show, I really want to get to this show real quick because I'm excited about this guest. Man, she is from the west side of Chicago. Her daddy was speaking loud before she started speaking loud. She is one of the loudest voices for the right thing in America. Man, she's a beast. P. Ray Easley. Hey, P. Ray.
Hey, thank you so much for having me this evening.
Man, I'm so excited to have you on this show. Man, I first saw you. Phil, you got some P. Ray clips. I sent them to you. If Amber didn't mess this up, Amber, you need to go get them clips. Okay, she run around after them little insurgents all damn day, them little Taliban insurgent, little white, little mulatto-ass kids. And they just running up and down the hallway, screaming all day. Listen to me, okay? You need to go and did you get the clips?
No.
Oh, man. See, Amber, you got to send him the P. Ray clips because I want people to understand what I'm getting ready to do here. P. Ray Easley is the person that is at the forefront and, quite frankly, single-handedly bringing the conversation, turning the urban community, the west and south sides of Chicago, red, the hood. And this came about after P. Ray and a couple of other people realized that bitch-ass Brandon Johnson, he's the mayor of Chicago. He calls himself a West Sider, but he's a whole nig. And sorry, I shouldn't say that on the show, but that's how I feel, right? Shout out to Lazy Prodigy, man. She is single-handedly creating a conversation. She has done so wonderfully in bringing people to understand that the Negro in that city has been cut off at the knees once again, and this time by someone who claims to be a part of who they are. And so, P. Ray, I appreciate you. I've been watching you. I'm so proud of what you're doing, young lady. And I want you to know that we're supporting you here. We want to see you keep up the good work. And thanks for joining us here on the Don Miller Show. So, P. Ray, when I first saw you, you were in the city council meeting in Chicago, and you were presenting a conversation that in the history of Chicago, Chicago for almost 50 years only had 2 mayors, more than 50 years, Richard J. Daley and his son. And the conversation was always one-sided, And now you got a black guy. Look, I thought that the lady before this dude was terrible. This is probably the worst mayor in the history of black America, not just Chicago. This dude is a clown ass at a level I'm unfamiliar with. Has decided to take the resources that has been historically committed to helping the people who have voted, who have built that city, and given them to criminal aliens. And P. Ray, you went to the microphone and you had a lot to say, so thank you so much. What brought you to that point where you felt like the time was now to engage in this conversation?
Well, first things first, thank you for having me. However, what took me to the mic is that I am the hostess of Black Excellence Hour, a show for people with high self esteem. And this show was the only right wing conservative show on WVON. You're from the city, so you're familiar with VON. So
Absolutely, the voice of the Negro.
the voice of the Negro, but it's a Democrat radio station.
I
So
know it
I
is.
had the only Republican show, but I'm a vibe and the people loved me. Uh, a lot of people would listen to my show, a lot of policyholders or stakeholders, rather, politicians, you name it. And an alderman called my show and told us that the first $51 million that was allocated to the illegals was actually opioid settlement money. And that money
Absolutely.
was supposed to go to build rehabs rather than give it to the people who the cartel trafficked here.
Right.
And so when I found this out, I realized, or let's go back. So that was the big thing. And so we know that the cartel has made the west side of Chicago the epicenter of the drug trafficking in this country. They're selling over
Absolutely.
$1 billion worth of heroin a year off of I-290, and 95% of the heroin in this country is trafficked off the west side of Chicago. So that
Absolutely.
turns us into a narco town. Now,
Absolutely.
I have a neighbor who lives about 100 yards to the north of me. And in the summer of 2020, she and her daughter were in the living room doing the TikTok dance. A bullet came through the window, hit her in the neck, and she bled to death in front of her entire family.
Oh my
Her
God.
grandmother, her mother, her sisters, her aunties, because on the west side, we buy these two
Everybody
flats and
live
the whole
together.
family lives there.
Absolutely.
Correct. I'm living in one right now. So with that, of course, her mother was very traumatized. So I went on the Chicago mugshot page and I saw her mother there wearing her daughter's Rest in Peace t-shirt. Her charge was possession, and she was obviously inebriated. So I went to the mic and I explained to Brandon that my family's been in our building for 52 years. The Jones family down the street has been in their family for 45 years in their building, excuse me, which means that we're paying property taxes every year on time. So if we have any resources, it's supposed to go to the property tax owners, not these illegals. We owe them absolutely nothing. But it seems like if you have a social security number in the city of Chicago, it puts you at a disadvantage.
Right. It's amazing because you talk about this when you look at the amount of money, and I want to talk, this is not a Chicago problem. I want to use Chicago as the epicenter of this crisis because when Mayor Adams in New York decided to call BS on it, they put some handcuffs on him on a bogus ass charge, right? And so Brandon Johnson is the song and dance king now for the Democratic Party as it relates to illegal immigration. Let's talk a little bit about how much money actually has been allocated to serve these criminal aliens.
So the city of Chicago has allocated $400 million to them. And we are, yes. And for fiscal year 2024, we ended in a $235 million deficit, which means that we overspent to pay for them. And I'm like, how can this happen when we have potholes? We have a Chicago school system that is not producing literate children. We have lots of homeless people on the street. We need people going to rehabs. They're hoarding the CHA money. So we don't understand, again, how they were able to come to these very rapid conclusions and pull money out of the sky blue for people who literally paid the cartel to traffic them to our country. So we're rewarding the cartel in two ways. We're rewarding them for bringing the people here, and letting them rest in our sanctuary city because sanctuary city status has attracted these people here. And then we're also rewarding them for coming by giving them food stamps, housing. They just took their health care away from them last year. We spent like $2 billion on that through the state. They got into the Chicago public schools without vaccinations. So in March 2023, Chicago was March 2024, Chicago was the epicenter of the measles outbreak in North America. The children were
Absolutely.
getting sick. So it just got too out of hand. But we also have to understand that the Chicago Teachers Union is who put Brandon in play, and they've been going down to Venezuela for the past decade, building relationships with these people, literally inviting them to come to the city of Chicago.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you say that because your former president of the teachers union, she didn't even want to put her little kid in the damn public school system. It was so bad. And that became a national story that the president of the teachers union opted to put her child in a private school. Let's talk a
So I
little
did
bit.
some research on that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, really quickly.
Yeah.
I did some research on that because I'm in this circle. I guess we're peers in a way. So I was told that she put her child in private school so that he could play varsity baseball his freshman year because no Chicago public schools wanted to give him a varsity baseball spot. That was the explanation that I was
Yeah,
given.
whatever. That's all BS to me, right? Let me just say this. So when you talk about the sanctuary city situation, a few years ago, Chicago closed 50 public schools. Absolute, all of them were black schools, right?
Correct.
And they said that the numbers and what it cost to keep them open was killing the budget. Can you talk a little bit about how many of those were just recently turned over as shelters for the criminal migrants?
Yes, so a number of these buildings were made into shelters for the illegals. However, it's very important that when we talk about the schools closing, we don't focus on the schools closing, but we focus on the amount of housing that was demolished during the Rahm Emanuel administration.
Absolutely.
You and I know what a two flat is, which is an apartment building with two apartments and then a garden apartment. So if we say we have 4 children per two flat and you tear down 7 2 flats, that's 28 children in an entire classroom. We're
Yes.
missing blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks of housing. So that's what we're focused on because not only are we at a housing deficit, but now they're giving the illegals a housing subsidy that is more than market rate rent and Section 8. So it's forcing landlords to take their money over the American money because the landlords have now been hit with a massive property tax hike. They are playing us from every single angle.
And let's talk about a program that as a kid that I know we benefited from early on in my poor ass, broke ass, black ass life, Section 8. I'm hearing that the Section 8 program is being hit pretty hard because a significant amount of those resources are going to the criminal ass aliens as well. Is that true?
Yes and no. So Section 8 is a federal initiative. So in order to participate in Section 8, you have to have a social security number. What the city of Chicago has been diligently doing is figuring out alternative ways to get housing funds without those stipulations attached. So this is what I'm saying. Even if you have Section 8 and you've been living in your Section 8 for years, if Pablo and Maria come and they have $30,000 in cash right now to move in a house, and you're looking at a property owner who owes $15,000 more in property taxes, he's going to take their money and tell you, Don, you and your family got to go because I got to pay my bills. That's what we're looking at. This entire issue has always been financial and based on the fact that the city of Chicago is purposely moving black people out by taking our housing away and giving it to them.
So when I ask this question, which is I've been following closely, how are these people who are criminal aliens who have come into this country illegally, how are they signing leases? And where is this money coming from? I'm looking at these numbers that they're receiving. It is significantly more than Americans who pay taxes are having to even find housing for a decent number.
So this money is coming from mostly Catholic charities and these different NGOs. We have been fighting very diligently in the city to make them stop giving away tax dollars, but they reallocated a significant amount of tax money to these people. I'll give you a personal example. So my daughter is a public school attendee here. Shout out to the Chicago Public Schools, and she attends a gifted school. When you attend a gifted school, that deal comes with a bus. Well, friends, the Chicago Public Schools decided that they were done transporting the nerds and that money would only go toward homeless or unhoused students, which means that because the illegals are counted as being unhoused, they are getting bus resources when people like me have to drive from Austin to the South Side back and forth twice a day to get my child to school. So they have done every single penny pinching thing to make sure that these people are very, very comfortable. And again, we're saying, why are we paying property taxes if it's not going directly back to the American people?
You know, a few years ago, I was in Chicago, and of course, when I go home, I want to see the hood, and I was amazed at how many. I like to say this because I'm going to keep saying this. Let's be clear. To see the criminal illegals in communities that I was stunned how many are on the south and west sides, and there was a great
Yes.
park that I remember as a kid, Amundsen Park. And
That's in my hood.
I know, and from what I understand, that is a place that is currently housing criminal illegals.
Oh no, sir. We definitely shut that down on the west side of Chicago. It's funny
Was that a
because I was on
proposal?
the radio.
Was that a
They
proposal?
tried it. That
Yeah.
no, it was a choice until the west side of Chicago said absolutely not. So it's funny because when they closed the field house, they put some porta potties out there for the children to use. The neighborhood burnt down the porta potties. They said we're not using porta potties if we have actual toilets in the field house. When you guys bring them here, we're gonna roll out chains in the street and pop all the tires on the buses, and we better not ever catch them outside. And it's funny because when I was on the radio, I was talking to them. I said, Alderman Talaferro is our alderman. I said, you all tomorrow at the community meeting, Alderman Talaferro is about to get cussed out the worst that he's ever been cussed out in his life. And 1,000 people from the community came out to this meeting, and everybody was in there screaming and yelling. And so they got rid of the deal. And Brandon Johnson lives in the 29th Ward. His wife was the chief of staff for the 29th Ward for a decade. So they both understood the importance of this park to our community. That's where Brandon messed up because now the West Side doesn't support him either.
So
Even
when,
for the audacity for trying.
so I'm looking at how much money you say $400 million
435 million.
have been spent, not to the people of Chicago, not to the taxpayers, not to the people who've been in that city for decades and decades. And let's be clear, I want to share with people, overwhelmingly, the people in Chicago, the black people, were a part of the millions of people who made the trek during the Great Migration, okay? My family came from Mississippi. And
What part?
Huh?
What part of Mississippi?
I'm from Rosedale, Deep South, in the Delta. But most black people
Okay.
in the South came from Mississippi and Alabama, right? And these are people who built that city, who worked in that city under difficult circumstances. So to take the money that should be allocated to the people who built that city, $400+ million, while you're looking at the education numbers in the Chicago public school system, okay, if you look at the reading numbers, 30% of the students, and probably less than that in terms of reading and math, are reading on the level and doing math on the level. Am I correct?
8% black people, 8% of black children are reading proficiently. I believe less than 10% are doing math proficiently as well.
And this is a
the numbers
giant
are absolutely abysmal.
And this is a giant public school system. And you talking about under 10% in reading and math, but you take $400+ million as a black man mayor, and you allocate it to some people who have snuck into this country, Phil. Let's be clear. And a friend of mine who was in her 36th year teaching in the Chicago public school system retired early. She could have did another 10 years. She started early. And simply because the measles outbreak and the other things that they've been dealing with, because these children come into this country, they don't get vaccinations, P. Ray. They just put them in school.
No papers. When I wanted to, so my daughter is going to a large selective enrollment high school. When I had to go sign her up, I had to bring her a birth certificate, a social security card, a voter registration card, a utility bill, and all her shots in order to enroll her in that school. But the illegals literally get to choose any school that they want to, and it is illegal to ask them for any paperwork. Again, why am I pushing my child to learn so well and do all her flashcards and get her lessons to pass the test if these people can literally just hop over the border and get those same opportunities? It squashes competition amongst the children. It's not right. And again, I encourage everybody on Sunday afternoon, make your ICE call. That number is 866-DHS to ICE, 866-347-2423. See something and say something today. Save Black America and get these people up out of here.
I'm snitching on all of them. I ain't even lying. I ain't gonna even lie. Because read my shirt, it's cheaper to deport than support. And I'm telling you right now, y'all, they can go to hell on me. I'm sorry. I don't care. I got a couple of people that I'm close to who believe that this is too much. But at the end of the day, if I snuck my black ass into any place I should not be, they are not even going to have a conversation with me. They're going to put me in some handcuffs until such point I'm put out of their country. And this is amazing because everybody wants to talk about the historical relationship between immigrants and black people. If you go back to Frederick Douglass' conversation, one of his greatest speeches, when he talks eloquently about the effects of illegal immigration on black people, and it's real. And when I'm watching these coon-ass black folk who running up behind, who are running up. First of all, let me just say this. Shout out to you for working for Barack Hussein Obama as a young lady. That must have been interesting.
I was a little girl. I was like 16 working a high school internship. So it wasn't like super duper. This is when he was still in Springfield.
I know that.
Important. It's funny. It's great that you bring him up because the issue is that we have too many non-Negroes speaking on Negro business. We got Barack Obama, who is
He's a non-Negro.
Irishman.
He's a non-Negro.
Correct.
Right.
We got Joy Reid,
Absolutely.
who is a non-Negro.
Oh,
She's
shout
a
out to my
Congolese Guyanan.
Shout out to my friend Osiris, who calls them Anns. Black Ann.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Black Ann.
Yeah.
We had Kamala, who we know is a
None
Indian
at all.
Yeah, not at all. Not
Right.
even a little bit.
Right.
But she tried it because she was a brown-skinned Indian.
Right.
We have all of these people who are tethering themselves to us to benefit off of our Negro trauma to the detriment of the Negro. So you can get a black face, even with Brandon up here saying, well, if ICE comes to Chicago, it's going to hurt Black Chicago. Where they sending us back to? Chula? We're not going back to Mississippi.
I ain't going back to Chula. I'm not going to Jackson,
No.
Cleveland, Mount Bayou. Okay, come on.
Oh, my people
okay.
are from there too.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm foundational black. The worst place you can send me is to a place where I came from, right? I'm done. You going to the motherland. What you mean, Mississippi? Okay.
Right. They gonna send us to Montana so we can starve? I don't know. But in any case.
But it's amazing to me when I watched you stand at the microphone and just so eloquently lay out your thoughts. I was so amazed, and shout out to Lazy Prodigy, my nephew in Austin. When I told him you were going to be the guest, he was so excited. And
he's still excited. He's all over the comments.
I know, Lazy. Lazy is one of your biggest fans. He's a rapper, allegedly.
Oh, thank you, love.
He's in Austin, Texas. I was just there last week with him. But what's really interesting is when I watched you speak, and as a guy at 18, I tell this story often. I've told it on the radio. I don't know if I've told it on this podcast. 18 years old, it's time for me to go vote. And my polling place was at the Martin Luther King Library on 34th and King Drive, right? Across from Lake Meadows. And I was so excited, and I got ready to go vote. And I went there, 18 years old, and I was told, look, read about both parties, make a decision. We didn't have any internet at that point. We had these red-ass encyclopedias that my mama paid for 29 years. Remember them encyclopedias, Phil? Mm-hmm. And I read about the liberals and the conservatives and the Democrats. And after reading extensively, I said, oh, I'm conservative. I'm a Republican. And I go to vote, and I'll never forget, they had the little polling places where you pull a curtain. And I went in to vote, and there was a little lock on the Republican side. And so I stick my head out of the curtain, and I asked the gentleman, hey, excuse me, sir, I'm trying to vote, but there's a little lock on this lever. He said, come here, man. He said, who's your people? And I'm like, what's that guy? He's like, get out of here. I was not able to vote at 34th and King Drive on my 18th birthday because they had blocked the ability to vote as a non-Democrat in the city of Chicago. And from that moment on, I realized what the real oppressive regime was to the Negro in America. And I spent the rest of my life saying, y'all can kiss my ass. And now I understand, I see it. So when I see a black woman like yourself go to the microphone in a volatile environment like Chicago, and you have to understand the history of Chicago. You got to read the book Boss. If you ever want to understand politics, you got to read the book Boss by Mike Royko. It's about the history and who Richard J. Daley was and the kingpin status that he maintained historically in American politics for 40, 50 years. And I'll never forget that. I talk about it often. But when I saw you, and I saw where you came from, and I watched the fact that Danny K. Davis and Bobby Rush and Jesse Jackson Jr. and Sr. and all of these people, Curtis Collins and all of these names I remember so vividly, sold the Negro in Chicago down the damn road. And now I see you, young lady, come to a microphone and holler, enough's enough. I was so overwhelmed and so proud. And I just want to tell you, keep doing it. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. It's Danny Davis is my godfather, and I
know
up
that.
in his office.
But Danny was Danny Coon for a long time. Let's be clear.
Let's be clear. So let's talk about it, because this is why I'm here, because of what I learned in my congressman's office. In the early 2000s, there was a federal initiative called WOW, with ownership wealth. And it was created by the Congressional Black Caucus to increase black home ownership by 1 million between 2000 and 2010. And I worked on this every single day. When I graduated from high school, I had 500 service hours from specifically working on this federal housing program. It was going very well. The Democrats, along with the Democrats and Rahm Emanuel, went behind them, lobbied the banking lobby to change the lending laws because they specifically preyed upon us, and they found this out in the Senate committees. What I'm most frustrated with my congressman, who I deeply love, okay? Now, I don't know him in the street. I know him. This is my very close kinfolk. I'm very disappointed.
You talking about Danny?
In him and the Yes, sir.
So I love Miss Vera. I love Miss Vera.
Yes,
I love Miss Vera.
I love Miss Vera.
Okay,
yes.
go ahead.
I'm an AKA. She wrote my letter for AKA. She's like my baby godmother. I digress. So I say this to say that I'm very disappointed that they did not push back against how they preyed upon us to undermine their program.
Absolutely.
Barack Obama bailed out the banks, but he did not bail out the homeowners, just allowed them to destroy the housing stock and then allow the cartel to come into Chicago and buy the housing stock of Black Chicago for cash. I had General Michael Flynn on my radio show, and he told us this on WVON.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, how is it that we can have the National Security Advisor on this Negro station telling us how the Democratic Party is working with an international terrorist organization to undermine our wealth and security, and yet y'all still running behind them? What kind of self-esteem is this? This is why I say my show is a show for people with high self-esteem. But you got to have good sense enough to know that these people do not care about you, and it's time to move on. Like, put your shoes on, tie them up real tight, because we're running to the right. If you want to keep on dealing with these people who are abusing you, taking your money, trying to chop your son's testicles off, give your daughters free secret abortions while failing to educate them, stay where you are. We don't want you on our side. But for the people who understand that their ancestors are buried flesh and blood in this land, who stood on their feet and chopped a whole lot of cotton for you to sit in your well air-conditioned rooms, you gotta show some honor and deference to the ancestors and move on from the people who have literally, systematically put us in the worst position that we've been in a very long time.
You know, wow, Phil, can I get an applause?
Yeah, really.
I just want to, hey, anybody got my joint over there? Give me my joint. I want to hit this joint right quick. I don't smoke joints. Okay, but the point I make is this, young lady. What you just said is real, because when you look at the history of how black people have engaged politically, it has overwhelmingly been to our detriment. And this is not a knock on Congressman Davis at all, because I can go down the list way before Congressman Davis, right? And I can go down the entire list of people who've represented the city of Chicago in Congress back to 1928 with Oscar DePriest, right? I ain't new to this. I'm true to this, right? And if you understand that, at what point do you raise your hand and say, I want somebody who's going to really speak on my behalf, right? We vote for people in Chicago, in Detroit, in Orlando, in Cleveland, in Cincinnati who go there and don't vote for us. and at what point are we going to say, wait a minute, I don't support what you support? But the fact that so many people, P. Ray, look away from what their interest is and become so enamored with the person that's showing up at the Rayburn office building and the Cannon office building on Capitol Hill, that they don't even know what they're supporting. And we have to say enough's enough. And any black person who thinks it's a good idea, and especially in the urban community, to support the conversation surrounding these illegal criminal aliens coming into our communities, taking what we have worked for, then shame on you.
Grant our people grace. You
Right.
got to grant our people grace. You say, why? Because you got to remember, when they came up here from down south, they were Republicans, terrorized Republicans. And when
Yes,
they got
they were.
to the city of Chicago,
Yes.
they ran into the terrorist organization called the Cook County Democratic Party and the Chicago Democratic Party.
Absolutely.
Up here, when they got here and they did not sign up for their precinct captain, they weren't going to be able to get a municipal job. They were not going to be able to get their garbage picked up, and somebody might come and throw a brick in their window and slap them in their faces. Okay, so we understand. I remember being a little girl, my father had a history degree, so all we talked about was history and politics all day in the house.
Absolutely.
And I said to him, Daddy, why aren't we Republicans? And he said, shut your mouth, Ray. Don't you ever say that outside this house. Don't you know that they'll stop picking up our garbage food? Don't you never say that no more. Don't you think about no Republicans or nothing. And I'm like, but this is what you're teaching me. He said, no, but this is Chicago. So when I'm
Absolutely.
teaching
Right here.
to the
Right here.
people, yes.
Absolutely.
So what I'm teaching to the people is that we're not dealing with the mobsters of the 60s. We're dealing with the weirdos from high school. These progressives are not as tough as these men were in the 60s, and we don't have to follow their perversion. But also, you also have to remember that the city is more socialist now. So the people are getting paid through these non-for-profits and these non-for-profit program checks. And the Democratic Party, they're the ones that's pushing the money to the non-for-profits. So if I'm living every month off of my $3,000 non-for-profit check, even if every single other aspect of the party is bad, I'm not going to vote against my own money. Brandon just created, or not Brandon, but the DNC just created $1 billion economy out of the ground within the past 3 months to counter what we're doing here. So I'm telling people I'm fighting against $1 billion now, just with my little bullhorn trying to tell people to listen to me. And people who are with me are now saying, nah, P-Ray, girl, I got to leave you alone because the bag about to drop.
But
so
you
this
know,
is how they are keeping us.
But P. Ray, what's interesting, I had to explain to some friends one night, and I'm just so happy, and I just thank Jesus Christ, my personal Savior, JC, even though I'm drinking up the drink. I just would like to say that sitting around smart people can change your life. And I was explaining to some friends of mine that when Dr. King came to Chicago in the 60s, he didn't come to Chicago to talk about voting rights. He came to Chicago to have a conversation about housing discrimination. And when he moved over by 16th and Holman, and Dr. King was run out of Chicago by what is called the Silent Six black aldermen who said, Negro, you need to go back to where you came from. We don't want your type in this city. Six
And
black
they bust
people.
them in the head with a brick.
Am I right?
Yeah, I said, and they bust them in the head
And
with
they
a
hit him in the
brick,
head with a
remember?
brick, Phil. So Dr. King was ran out of Chicago by 6 black aldermen. You can Google the Silent Six in Chicago. So when you look at the fact that the sellout, the attachment to everything against us has been engaged for so long, right? And then you look at how that when you look at any major metropolis where that is led, there's some tricky stuff going on. I mentioned this the other day. You look at LA, Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, every major market now is led by a black, woman liberal. Let's talk a little bit about that. What is that about?
So remember, everybody that's listening to me, that the Democratic Party is the party of the Confederacy. They never cared about black people. But what they need is for black female faces, because we are the face of maternal energy in this country, to lead this fight against the Negro. Nothing more, nothing less. So if you get a black face to say it, then they're like, oh, it can't be racist because black people are saying it. And we're saying here in Chicago, our enemy is not the white Republican boogeyman, it is the Negro Democrat. That's who we're fighting against in the state of Illinois. So we don't even make it racial, but they need to have black faces in order to hide their racism. It is very racist to have, not racist, excuse me, negrophobic. That's my word.
Negrophobic?
It is very negrophobic.
Okay,
it is
I
very
like that.
negrophobic to have an open border, because they have been talking about for at least 180 years in this country how illegal immigration hurts the Negro. It is negrophobic to have these people here because we understand that they're taking our housing, they're taking our land, they're taking resources away from our children who can't read because now we got to teach all these illegals English. So the Democratic Party is and will forever be the party of negrophobia. And people like you and me have the duty to teach our people that in a way that empowers their patriotic esteem and does not make them feel shame for being tricked.
You know, and it's interesting though, because a lot of the pushback that I get, because I'm in a southern state, at least you're in the city, and I think maybe the embrace for you, I hope, is much better than me, that I run against a bunch of black folk who are so lost and caught up that it's pretty terrible when I even try to have these conversations. But the good thing is I got my drink, and I don't care.
I used to get cussed out on VON. Ooh, they used to call the station and talk about me. So I was an insult, a disgrace. But
can I shout out? Can I shout out Mel, the owner of VON? Sometimes you don't know which one you gonna get though. You don't know which Mel you gonna get.
I don't want to talk about Melody because you know she told me my show was her favorite show.
I know, but she ain't gonna say that publicly.
No, she won't say it publicly. And so what she did was, I was hosting the night show for a long time, and then all of a sudden Tavis Smiley comes with his show out of LA. His morning show in LA plays in Chicago at night, 14 hours behind the news. Because the DNC literally paid to get me off the air, because when I was talking to my congressman, he said, you know, you turning my wife into a Republican. We sit there and listen to your show, and she say, hey, Daddy, you know she right. You know what she talking about. Why y'all not doing this stuff? So he said, if you are getting to my wife, I can only imagine what the rest of the city is doing. And this is why Barack Obama has moved back to Chicago. Rahm Emanuel is back in Chicago, and they have dropped $1 billion into the street, because the goal now is to corral the Negroes back into the Democratic plantation. But that blue wall is dead. It'll never be the same. Every single day, we're pulling more and more people away from the Democratic Party, because not only are we showing them who they are, but they continuously show us that the Negro is not their priority. The reason that the Democratic Party fell on the Madigan's going to jail, and what's the other name? Burke went to jail. You want to know why they went to jail?
Edmund Burke.
Because, yes, Edmund Burke went to jail, or going to jail, because the DNC or the Democrats.
So what you're saying, let me pause right here. What she's saying,
yes,
Phil, is a member of the Illinois Supreme Court's husband is on his way to prison.
Oh.
For 12 years.
Yes.
And
his wife's on the Supreme Court.
Correct.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So the reason that this is happening is because the Democrats decided they were going to divest from the Negro and invest all of their resources into the Hispanics, and all the Mexicans wore wires on them. And now those good old Irishmen are going to jail. Again, Negrophobia don't pay. But they're seeing this over and over again. And rather than fight in this muck, I'm telling people, come on, let's go. We could go to the Republican Party and make this what we want it to be, because the field is so open. But why did we spend 1 year getting somebody elected and then 4 years fighting them, and over and over and over and over again? Ain't y'all tired? Like, nobody, at least I don't, enjoy putting on my shoes, driving downtown, finding parking, going to City Hall, dealing with all the ghetto stuff down there. I want to be in my house making salmon croquettes and biscuits in the morning, but I cannot, because every day I gotta put my shoes on and go fight the man. We're tired of fighting. Everything in this city we have to fight for, and our enemy is the Democratic Party. So we're done. That's it. I'm telling people, no more discussion.
So let me just ask you this. So The first time you had the ear of President Trump, how did that go?
Amazing. So I met him in the White House in 2018, just playing. In the White House, we took a bunch of selfies and stuff. But
Uh-huh.
the second time was amazing because he actually saw that clip that you're referring to and put a message to me directly on Truth Social that said, "P. Ray, I saw you on Fox News tonight. You're an amazing leader. Wise me on your time. We're going to reach out to you." So I went to
And
a
I just want to,
rally.
P. Ray, hold on. Phil, this was a direct message from President Trump, not a staffer.
Get out.
This was a
Yeah,
direct
on his
message
page.
to P. Ray from the president. Go ahead.
So I go to the rally, and Secret Service taps me on the shoulder. They said, "Are you P. Ray?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Come with us." I said, "Why?" They said, "Because the president want to meet you in the back." So I
Absolutely.
go to the back. I'm waiting. He walks in. I start screaming. He starts screaming. Both of us are fanning out. He's like, "Oh my God, you are so inspiring. You keep me going. Like listening to you, and you in Chicago doing this." So I said, "Mr. President, I need you to come to Chicago. I need you to come see us in Chicago. We are carrying this for you. Please show up, please." So we took a picture. I think this is the only picture where the president kind of hugged up on somebody.
He
I
was
told him,
hugged
"Mr.
up on
President,
you.
we hug."
Yes.
Yes, I told him we hugged up like we taking a prom picture. But I say that to say it's been so that was a very good thing. Now, what he has done for the city of Chicago is we asked him to send Tom Homan. Tom Homan has shown up. So they have a
Yes.
huge deportation operation going here. But they also, as of yesterday, the Department of Justice added Chicago to the Safe Neighborhoods initiative that they're doing
Absolutely.
federally. So the
Yes.
feds are coming here. And this matters a lot to me because Operation Legend, which was an initiative during the first administration that used federal resources to help local municipalities solve cold cases and dismantle criminal organizations. When they came to the city of Chicago, they saw three murders in my family, two of my first cousins, and my third cousin. We never thought we were going to get justice, but Donald Trump saw them as being more than black men being killed on the Chicago sidewalk. And we
That's a
got
fact.
justice, and they dismantled that entire criminal organization. Those men had killed like 19 people in 18 years. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Absolutely.
and Donald
Damn.
Trump is the only one who took our grief seriously enough to get us justice. So I'm super excited about what's going to happen moving forward.
You know, it's interesting because when black people say positive stuff about the president, it's always, you go to that bull, that's I almost cussed. You go to the shade room and places like that, and they always got some curveball nonsense. But listen to me, I go back to the late 1800s when Frederick Douglass so eloquently said, knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave, right? So my whole life, after reading that quote 56, almost 50 years ago for sure, knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. I have consistently believed that knowledge changes all of this. Not the way you vote, okay, not who you talk to, but seeking knowledge. And the more you learn, the more you understand how this works, that makes you unfit to bow down and to play this game with the anti-Negro. And the anti-Negro can be a Negro, quite frankly, in America today.
Most of the times he is.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when I talk to some of the president's people, your name came up. A couple of them know that I'm from Chicago, and one of them was like, "You got to know P. Ray." I'm like, "No, I don't know P. Ray." But you got to know P. Ray. Like, white folk, listen, I love my white friends. We all don't know each other, but at some point we're gonna figure out that we're gonna find. So I called a friend in Chicago who used to sell a lot of dope on the west side, and he was like, "You know P. Ray's daddy." And then I realized that your dad has been a loud voice on the west side of Chicago for so many years, just a man of integrity. And that's when I was like, "Oh yeah, I know you 100%, all the way good." The friend I'm talking about did about 17 years in federal prison. He's working for Jesus now. He's doing great work.
Amen.
He left Chicago. But your dad, let's talk a little bit about how you got this and what your dad has done.
So my daddy, his name is Ray Easley. That's why I'm P. Ray Easley.
Mm-hmm.
And my daddy, he and my mom got together when they were in seventh grade. Went through the Chicago public schools together, went to Illinois colleges, and then when they graduated from college, they moved back to the west side of Chicago because the white man's ice is not colder, white man's ice water is not wetter. We're going
Ain't
to
it amazing when you
move
got a
our-
Republican talking about the white man's water, the white man's ice?
No,
Go
because
ahead, I'm
as soon
sorry.
as our people get 2 dimes, they want to run away from their neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah.
And my parents said, no, we're not doing that. So they
Uh-huh.
wanted to invest their social and political capital into the community that
Right.
raised them. So this is what I've been doing my entire life. This is what I've been watching my entire life. My mother got a doctorate degree in studying the effect of lead in the groundwater, of the educational outcomes of children who live in manufacturing districts, which we know are black kids that live on the
Absolutely,
west
right.
side. Congressman Davis took that research and went and got some federal money to fix all the pipes. So
Yes.
this is the kind of stuff that we do.
And that was
My daddy,
Phil, that was 2000s, late 90s.
Oh, really?
Yes.
yes. Yep, she finished her dissertation in like 2000. So
Mm-hmm.
he took that and he got some federal work. So that's the kind of work we do. You know, when you live in a community, diversity means more than race. Diversity is skills. So I can go down to City Hall and I can talk to my neighbor who has an addiction, but she can't go down there and talk about it, but she can watch my house and make sure nobody come and steal my flower pots off my porch. So, you know,
Absolutely.
you got to build this community. And so this is all my daddy ever did his entire life is build community on the west side of Chicago. They're doing the Soul City Corridor down Chicago Avenue now. That's a Ray Easley thought. The West Side Ministers Coalition, which is now the Leaders Network, which is an organization of pastors who are supposed to be concentrating their political capital to advance the West Side, but now they're something else. But that was his brainchild. So again, I was his sidekick. This is all I do. And so when I was growing up, listening to these meetings, meeting after meeting, note after note, phone call after phone call. Again, I'm tired. We've been having these same conversations
But all
since
that
I was a
time,
child.
but P. Ray, all that time, it was about a Democrat.
Correct.
Okay. Go
That
ahead.
we know who the enemy is.
Right.
It's a consistent enemy.
Right.
And so my father passed away in 2013, but the city of Chicago is building a monument to him, an 8-foot tall bronze and granite monument of him at Austin Town Hall that we're going to unveil very soon. So again, this is all we know how to do. I'm in the community to use my intellectual capital to improve the community that loves me. And I feel the safest in the world in the Austin community.
But see, I remember your dad. I think the couple of times that I met him, I remember your dad with Reverend Milton Bronson, and Reverend Bronson had Christ Tabernacle. You remember
On
that?
Central.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and they had a great choir called the Thompson Community Singers,
And they were competition against that Southside Choir.
absolutely. And what was amazing is when you grow up in urban America and you're young and you're poor and you want out, you find yourself finding any box that is going to be positive as it relates to your way out. And I remember your dad, we had a lot of friends in common, and the gangbangers respected your dad. And am I right?
Yes. They're the
Okay.
reason I can do the work that I do on the west side of Chicago on the
Today, still today. So because of that, I want to ask a question real quick. Just recently, President Trump, pardoned Larry Hoover. Larry Hoover has been incarcerated since 1973. Larry Hoover was charged in 1973, not for pulling the trigger, but allegedly for ordering a murder. The trigger man was out of prison by 1991. In 1997, Larry Hoover was resentenced for 2 consecutive 200-year terms. Just recently, Donald Trump gave him clemency. He was incarcerated. He was in solitary confinement for 27 years. He's been in the ADX Supermax prison outside of Denver, Colorado. But just recently, in the last 2 weeks, Donald Trump pardoned Chairman Hoover, who was the founder of the Gangster Disciples. Now, I recall vividly when the Gangster Disciples, GD, shifted from being a gang to being an organization called Growth and Development, where 30,000 young black men had decided to move in a different direction. And that is when the federal authorities came in and gave him more charges and 200, 300, 400 years in the ADX Supermax. What are your thoughts on the clemency for Larry Hoover?
This is a little tricky for me because, as I just shared with you, my cousins were murdered on Chicago sidewalks. I have an uncle who was murdered on a Chicago sidewalk, and we just got justice. I would be absolutely disgusted if my family members' murderers were pardoned by any American president.
Okay.
What I think that my Donnie was doing is removing the responsibility of keeping Hoover from the federal government because it costs a lot of money to keep people locked up in Florence. So he's like, you know what? The state of Illinois, this is your prisoner. You take him back. We don't want to keep him because the reason that he's there is because when he was in Joliet, they said he was still running a criminal enterprise. So
Absolutely.
they had to get him out of the state and move him into Supermax. And Donald Trump said, no, you take him back, JB.
Right.
I think that just based on what I know about gang culture, I know that Willie Lloyd, who is one of the founders of the Four Corner Hustlers, was
Absolutely.
shot like a dog in Garfield Park and rendered a
Absolutely.
paraplegic until he passed away.
Absolutely.
So when the Chiefs get out of jail, that does not mean that the young boys are going to take a knee. I
And,
also don't, I'm sorry, go ahead.
and you're right, because my friend Pierre, who was murdered on his mama's porch on the west side of Chicago, who was a definite governor, and involved heavily. And I think people are looking at this in a different light. I think taking this guy out of solitary confinement after more than 50 years in a federal institution, sending it back to let the state make the decision, again, is it's like you say, it's tricky, and we have to be cognizant of now Governor Pritzker, who I don't trust at all. Let's be clear.
No.
Okay? Governor Pritzker is a billionaire who is not seeking money or wealth. He's seeking power. It's going to be interesting how this ends up.
Yeah, well, always remember that Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger killed Tukey, who was the founder of the Crips. So if the founder of the Crips,
Tukey Smith.
Tukey Stokes,
Tukey
Tukey
Smith.
Stokes got.
Smith.
Smith. I'm sorry, I didn't know. See, I got
Tukey
that
Smith,
wrong.
yep,
So
Tukey Smith.
Tukey Smith was taken out by a governor, and I think that JB is going to be on that same type of time and energy. He is not going to release that man back to the south side of Chicago because, again, based on what we've seen when they've released other chiefs, that does not make the young boys take a knee. It does not mean that he can go over there to O Block and get the little babies back in control. They don't respect their own mama. So I know that this is not going to be what the people think it's going to be. They don't know their literature. They don't have any literature.
You just mentioned this. I grew up on 62nd and King Drive, which is a block from O Block, and I lost my mom a couple of years ago, and she lived there when she passed away because, of course, they ain't moving. And
Right.
when you understand, so tell me, as someone who has been ringing the bell in Chicago, and I watched the voting numbers, you single-handedly drove a lot of turn from blue to
Thank you.
red. How did the major political players, Jonathan Jackson and people like that, and Robin Kelly, how do they see you in Chicago? How do the Democrats in power see you?
They love me. They absolutely, positively love me. They say that I say all the things that they cannot say. And when I say things, it forces the Democratic Party to act in the way that we want them to act because they can say, you hear P. Ray on this show, you hear the callers calling in saying that they're done with the Democrats. So maybe we should slow down this immigration. Maybe we should start walking back some of these abortion issues. Maybe we should figure out how to get an office for generational Americans. They love me. They're always like, P. Ray, keep going. When you show up, you make us work. Now, initially, I thought that they hated me. Even with Congressman Davis, I had the opportunity to go watch Brandon testify before Congress. I had on this black MAGA hat, and I was sitting behind
I saw you.
Mayor Adams.
I saw you.
So during the break, Congressman Davis was there, and he was talking to somebody. And when I walked up, he said, "Excuse me, my girl here, you got to go." So I'm sitting there, I'm talking to my congressman. We're taking selfies on his phone. I'm like, Congressman, text me that. He's like, I don't know how to do nothing like that. So I got my congressman's phone in the halls of Congress wearing a MAGA hat, sending a selfie of us to my phone. So again, I grew up as a princess in the Democratic Party. And the running joke that they have is that they raised me politically for a white man named Donald Trump to come steal me away. But I told them I'm doing exactly what you all told me to do. I'm the only reason I'm even a Republican, period, is because I signed up to go to an event where Ben Carson was going to be because I wanted to talk about federal housing mismanagement, and it just happened to get moved to the White House. They're like, no, we understand what you're doing, and we are proud of you. They tell me this all the time. We are so proud of you and how you've been able to maneuver and how you can speak to our people and speak to our self-esteem, because typically when conservatives come talk to black people, it's always about what we don't have, about our lack, about how we need to do better. And nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants their secrets told to their faces. Everybody knows what's wrong with them every single day. So what I do is I tell the people that you are as American as sweet potato pie, not apple pie, sweet potato pie. And everything from seed to shining seed is for you and you first, Negro people. And that even makes those Democrat people feel empowered. So they love it. They love it. They love it. They love it. I still get the stuff that I need. I still got their phone numbers. I call them. They know I'll show up at their office if they're doing something wrong. It's just been a great relationship. It's been a really great journey for me.
So P. Ray, I got to ask you this question. Several of my listeners have sent me messages as we are live. Look, I do a live podcast. All that old taping and cutting, I ain't doing all that. I'm too old for that. What's next for P. Ray? You have any plans of running for office?
I'm thinking about it. A lot of people want me to run for office. They're like, P. Ray, whatever you run for, you're going to win. Now, I did run for alternate delegate to the RNC in the 7th Congressional District, which is on the south and west sides under Congressman Davis. I got 3,065 votes with no campaign. I mean, no.
That is unheard of. That's unheard
of.
Yes,
I got 3,000 votes as a Republican in the 7th Congressional District. So that made everybody's lights go off. Like, what is going on with
I think the most votes were probably less than 200.
Correct.
Yes.
And then so even the aldermen, there are some commissioner races where they don't get 3,000 votes,
Absolutely.
but P. Ray got 3,000 votes. The only thing is that I love being a talk show hostess. And if I were to run for office, I could not be on the airwaves. My goal is to get back on these Chicago airwaves because we don't have any alternate messaging. Everybody is talking against the president. They're talking about, oh, we gonna block out ICE, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you fool, you. Don't say that we blocking out ICE. You better make your phone call. Either call ICE or learn Spanish. What you gonna do? Because you don't speak Spanish and all the jobs are now bilingual preferred. You're gonna starve if you don't make those ICE calls.
Absolutely.
So that's my goal. I want to keep getting this message out. I want to keep empowering people's patriotic esteem. And we got to finish flipping this thing before I go get in office. Because once I get in office, now I have to be politically correct.
Well, you know what? I just want to thank you for joining us. P. Ray Easley, west side of Chicago. Two people just asked me, where'd you go to school?
Hampton University, the better HU in Hampton,
Phil.
Virginia.
Hey,
Phil, you heard what she just said?
that's where I'm from. And Kaylin back here.
Yeah, they from Hampton. They got them Hampton people over there. Kaylin. She went to Hampton University. Okay, so that means she went to a really good high school. Okay, because you ain't go to no ragged-ass high school, huh?
Whitney Young Magnet.
Okay. All right, so she went to a good high school.
I went to Menchville.
So, you went to Hampton. That's
Yes,
great.
sir.
Thank
On
you
a
so
full
much.
academic scholarship.
And she is an AKA. I want to shout out the AKAs. My little sister is the regional, Florida, Georgia. I think Georgia, Florida, Georgia, Alabama. And she, how many states? I don't know. Anyway, she's listening. But thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Can we have you back one day?
Absolutely. Yes, you can have me back anytime, and you all can support our movement at chicagored.org. Everything that we're doing is with a bullhorn and a bunch of courage.
Hey,
So
do me a
help
favor,
us
Phil. Put
keep
her
this
ad
going.
so people can follow. Put that up on the screen.
All right.
We want people to follow P. Ray Easley. She's doing Chicago Red P at Chicago Red P. She's doing great, amazing work. I really appreciate you. I'm going to send you this shirt. You got to wear it and send me a picture.
I'm away at the City Hall for you.
Okay, and when we come to the shop, that means you got to go hang out with me and get some food.
Let's go to MacArthur's when you're ready.
Oh, no, I ain't going to no MacArthur's now. I ain't going
No.
No, I got
You're
some
not
places we
coming
can
that
go. Huh?
Okay.
I ain't coming over there like that. No, I got some places we can. Yeah, I guess we could. You probably dug in, so yeah. But P. Ray, thank you so much. Shout out to all the people listening in Chicago. Shout out to my friend P. Ray Easley. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Don. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Mwah.
Phil, man, listen, man.
Wow. Best guest.
Oh, she is on it. She's killing the game.
Wow.
And I just want to say
So
thank
passionate, dude. Like,
you. You know, and I think it's important that we really put out, there are so many people, interestingly enough, many young women of color who have taken a position that they're going to speak out, even in the most difficult situations. And P. Ray, our guest last week, was just amazing as well. It is just, man, amazing to me that we are not a monolith, right? And I was born black, not Democrat.
yeah.
Okay? And this is what we have to say. We have to say it publicly. We have to wear the shirt. The shirt's going to be on the DonMillerShow.com. I was born black, not Democrat. You don't own me. You don't own my thoughts. You're not going to ever own my thoughts. The fact of the matter is, I know who the oppressor is. I know who the oppressor has been. And just because you send somebody that looks like me to the microphone to speak to me, I will not be tricked by the motives of the white liberal. And just as Malcolm said in the late 60s and right before he died, to all of us, beware of the white liberal. And I tell you today, I would tell you tomorrow, and I would tell you until I'm no longer here, we must beware of the white liberal. Now let's talk real quickly. The show is going to run a little long. I hope people, if you got something to do, you can always come back and watch. But I want this show to run a little long because there's a couple of things I want to point out. Phil, did you get any messages or any videos from Amber?
I got the 2 you sent me earlier.
Okay, so she didn't send you anything else.
And the Obama one.
Okay. I want to play, did you get the Michelle Obama video?
Yes.
So this is Michelle Obama, the first black woman to be a first lady of the United States. And this is her speaking about illegal immigration in this country. Play the
This
clip.
current climate for me, it's, what's happening to immigrants. So it's not the fear for myself anymore. I drive around in a 4-car motorcade with a police escort. I'm Michelle Obama. I do still worry about my daughters in the world, even though they are somewhat recognizable. So my fears are for what I know is happening out there in streets all over the city. And now that we have leadership that is sort of indiscriminately determining who belongs and who doesn't, and we know that those decisions aren't being made with courts and with due process, and, that it's being made like this cop that pulled my brother over when he was 12. You don't look like somebody that belongs. I can determine just by looking at you that you're a good person or you're not a good person. And knowing that there's so much bias and so much racism and so much ignorance that fuels those kind of...
Okay. Now let me just say this. This is Michelle Obama, black first lady from Chicago, South Side, Gresham, lived on O Block. Daddy worked at the bridge. Brother Craig sitting up next to her with his weird ass. And she's talking about she struggled with sleeping because her concerns for illegals in this country. Not the Negroes who voted for her overwhelmingly or stood out in the cold, but for illegals who snuck into this country, criminal aliens. She can't sleep at night because she's concerned about them. And this is what her husband said.
Oh, here we go.
And this is what makes this amazing, and we have to learn. Go ahead.
Last time we spoke, you said that you weren't king, you were president. There were only certain things you could do unilaterally. As time goes on, 1,000 deportations on average a day. People are wondering, and our Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds, that's the question everybody asks. Won't you at least consider unilaterally freezing deportations for the parents of deferred action kids?
Yeah. Here's the problem that I have, Jose, and I've said this consistently. My job in the executive branch is supposed to be to carry out the laws that are passed. Congress has said, here's the law when it comes to those who are undocumented, and they allocate a whole bunch of money for enforcement. And what I have been able to do is to make a legal argument that I think is absolutely right, which is that given the resources we have, we can't do everything that Congress has asked us to do. What we can do is then carve out the DREAM Act folks, saying young people who have basically grown up here are Americans that we should welcome. We're not going to have them operate under a cloud, under a shadow. But if we start broadening that, then essentially I would be ignoring the law in a way that I think would be very difficult to defend legally. So that's not an option. And I do get a little worried that advocates of immigration reform start losing heart and immediately thinking, well, somehow there's an out here if Congress doesn't act.
Hey, stop it right there, Phil. So let me just say this real quick before I get out of here. This dude sent 3 million people back to where they came from. He deported, they were calling him the deporter in chief. He sent 3 million people. He was sending 2,000 a day back. But there were no cameras. And when I'm watching these ignorant ass white people, these liberal whites and these ignorant ass blacks, when I watch this, right, that they're upset that Donald Trump is getting these people and sending them back, and nobody remembers that this dude has sent more people back than 5 presidents combined. This is crazy to me how easily we forget. And to the Negro who think that what Michelle Obama said made any damn sense, that she can't sleep at night because people didn't vote for her are getting sent back for sneaking in, and you Negroes voted Democrat for these two? Y'all, shame on you Negroes. Thank you so much, everybody. Phil, let's run quickly through my sponsors, man. I love these people, man. Let's run quickly through these people, man. I'm so angry at this. Castelleon Jewelers, man, Renee, Yvette, man, I love you so much. Shout out to them, man. They, again, look, this is getting ready to get better.
Flex Auto.
Flex Auto. Felix, thank you, man. It just, I sit here, and it rubs me the wrong way in such a level that you got Michelle Obama from the south side of Chicago taking her black ass to a microphone talking about how she can't sleep at night because some illegal ass immigrant is getting sent back to their country of origin. Not because a black person got hemmed up or had an issue, but some people that didn't even vote for them. But you black people consider those two your heroes? Shame on you! My name is Don Miller. Like, subscribe. I'll see your ass next week. Bye-bye, everybody.